Hello, Irish fans, and welcome to Dome and Domer, the oldest Notre Dame football podcast on the planet. Joining me, Ed Jordanek always, and Mike Coffey from ndnation.com. Ed, so we didn't do a show after the Navy win, obviously. Great game, a lot of momentum building for this team. This matchup is not quite what we thought it was going to be at the beginning of the year. They're a talented football team, but it just goes to show if you don't have an elite quarterback, you are going nowhere in college football. And that's going to be evident Saturday. I'm not expecting Notre Dame to lose this game. I don't think there's. We said that before Northern Illinois. I get it, but what are your thoughts in terms of what has to happen going into this? I mean, at least there's something to play for here, and Notre Dame is now the outside looking in terms of a home game for the playoffs if they went out, obviously, right? But they're going to have to look good the rest of the season in order to establish that. So at least there's something they're playing for. It's not like we're just riding out the end of the season. But what do you think has to come out of this game for it to be a successful win?
Well, I think they have to come out strong early and, just completely take control of the game. I mean, from all indications, Mike Norvell has sort of a team that's kind of quit on him. I think it would be a really bad look if Notre Dame struggled to win this game. I don't think they will. They usually play well after a bye. They're rested. They're healed up a little bit. So I think that they've got to come out and dominate, and it's got to be 35-0, 35-3 at halftime, 28-0, 28-3 at halftime, and then coast to a they got to cover basically, right? I think if the spread is 25, they've got to cover at a minimum. Which
is a big number. I mean, that's a little surprising.
I think it's actually gone. I think I want to say it's like 26 and a half.
27 now, right? Yeah, that's right.
Something like that.
But I mean, you look at the teams that Florida State has played. I mean, North Carolina is not a good football team, and Florida State got routed by them. So, they've got to do that because obviously, as Notre Dame fans, our hope is that somewhere, somehow, some way, they sneak into the 5 through 8 spot. I mean, we know it's not going to be 5; it's unlikely to be 6. 7 is a stretch. So, we're just trying to get a home game, which means a tough opponent and a tough second round matchup if we win. So, the Northern Illinois game sort of screwed the pooch in terms of getting that 5-12 matchup and being able to play a Miami or a BYU or somebody like that in a quarterfinal. So we'll see. But they just have to keep doing what they've been doing. I mean, obviously they've come a long way since Northern Illinois. They've overcome some really tough injuries. I don't think the national scene, and every team has injuries, of course, but I don't think the national scene really has a conception of sort of the quality of players that sort of are not going to be playing for Notre Dame for the rest of the season. And that'll catch up with them against a really good team, but they certainly don't have anybody, on the schedule ahead of them that they shouldn't beat by 20 points to 20 to 30 points. Definitely not.
Yeah.
That includes USC. USC is a dumpster fire. So.
Right. I mean, I'm assuming, Coffee, you're feeling the same thing. There's not a chance we're going to lose this game, but were you a little surprised at the 10th ranking? I mean, is that kind of where we probably should have been?
Well, I think that, as you pointed out, Northern Illinois is the millstone that is dragging ND down from where they could be, because wherever the committee is looking at various statistics, I mean, it's everyone keeps saying, "Oh, that's the worst loss of any of the teams." I think Northern at this point is like 5-4 or something. I mean, at what point does Southern Cal become the worst loss for some of these, for
LSU,
LSU and stuff like that? I mean, there's
right.
I think from a perception standpoint, NIU is going to be hard to overcome to get Notre Dame into the home game part of the bracket, if only because there's teams immediately behind them that as soon as they beat an opponent that's considered meaningful, they'll jump. The people will put them ahead of Notre Dame because Notre Dame has NIU, and it's frustrating. But at the end of the day, we did it to ourselves. I mean, I still very firmly believe that if Riley Leonard had had those 15 practices in the spring, he would have come out of the gate much stronger. Notre Dame wouldn't have lost that game, and we'd still be undefeated right now. But
yeah,
other than that, this is like how'd you like to
play? That might be the case, but he did enough to beat Texas A&M at Kyle Field. the week before. So I
Right.
hate that. I'm not a big fan of that excuse, and I don't love it when I hear, Denbrock say, well, this is what it's going to be. We got to, bring him along, and, we knew we were going to struggle. I mean, okay, it's a directional school in the MAC. If you really felt that way, then freaking play Steve Angeli to win the game. I don't buy this whole sort of thing. That was a loss that was terrible. But I will say this: if IU loses to Michigan Saturday, Notre Dame will go up a spot, guaranteed, and IU will probably be out of the playoff picture. Because they will then go on to lose to Ohio State and have 2 losses. It all really comes down to these conferences and how many people or how many teams they're willing to take. If the Big Ten or the SEC somehow, because of cannibalization, only end up with 3 each, then Notre Dame is going to get a home game. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah.
But if BYU and
like Iowa State or something, or
exactly.
I find that unlikely myself. But
right.
I don't think the Big 12. I don't think the Big 12 or the ACC are getting more than 1 in.
They shouldn't.
They shouldn't.
Just
right.
by the eye test.
But here's the thing that's so weird is what happens if Clemson ends up winning the ACC? Well, they're in, and now what do you do with Miami if they only have 1 loss and it's the Clemson and it's a close game?
SMU maybe only has 1 loss.
Yeah, I mean it's just going to get really there is politics that's going to come into play here. But I'm kind of curious, Coffee, because I think if all of a sudden we play like we played against Navy, and if it is true, I know a lot of Notre Dame fans think like, holy cow, Riley Leonard is finally delivering where we thought he was going to be. There is truth in that. And what I would say is I think the committee is going to have to respect that. Like, we all know that the committee doesn't watch football games. So it helps us that they had 6 turnovers, because they look at that and they're like, oh my God, Notre Dame's defense must have just caused every single one of those. And little do they know there was 5 of them that were just giveies.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, though, is that if Riley Leonard is playing at a higher level from a throwing the football standpoint, Notre Dame is a very dangerous offense with him running he does. They are going to be a very tough out if he plays with that kind of confidence throwing the football. Because I'll tell you what, a guy that can drop back like that and hit somebody in the open and which keeps those linebackers honest, he's going to get 6-7 yards every single time he breaks breaks the pocket. So I think the committee's going to look at that. And if Notre Dame can just execute well here these last 3 games offensively, almost, the defense is who they are. They're elite. Everybody knows it. They're elite.
Actually 4 games. But.
Yeah. Well, so
see, my thought is, you look at a lot of other teams that are out there, and other than like Oregon has looked fantastic. And I'm trying to think of a team in the SEC that's consistently played well. The thing is, there aren't a lot of scary teams out there. I mean, Georgia will play great in 1 game and then terrible in the next.
Yeah.
Texas will play great in 1 game, terrible in the next. They're, as I said, Oregon, I think, has shown the level of consistency that to get there. Now, if they have to play Ohio State again at a neutral site in the Big Ten championship game, I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe that's the point where Oregon shows, yes, we are the best team in the country, and we're going to prove it right here, right now. Or maybe they say, well, if the game's not all the way out in Autzen or whatever, we're not so unbeatable. So, I mean, looking at the bracket that came out, I mean, I'm not scared to play at Penn State. Penn State's an incredibly overrated team.
Yeah, I'm looking at
100%. I'm not in a neutral site game against someone like Miami or BYU or Georgia or whatever. Those games don't scare me like they might have in previous years, because Notre Dame's playing well, especially on defense, as you said, and those teams really aren't showing themselves to be world beaters.
Yeah. Is there Ed, is there anybody that scares you in that top 12 at the moment? I mean, Oregon, I think, is by far clearly the most electric on offense. I mean, they have some absolute studs. There's no doubt about that. But, from a defensive standpoint, you always hear that championships are won on defense. For me, the first round game, I'm not worried at all about. It's going to be a good game. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Notre Dame's just an absolute win there. But if they win that game, that second round game, I'm not, that could possibly be BYU or Miami, and neither one of those teams scare me at all.
Yeah, I mean, I
Mhm.
think it's unlikely to be BYU or Miami, but I mean, I think if it is Georgia or Oregon, there's nothing that says to me like, oh gosh, this is 2012 Alabama type situation at all. They're both very very good. I mean, the thing is that I think what will catch up with Notre Dame is just sort of the raw talent level. Um, Oregon scares me more because they I think their quarterback situation is very settled
Yeah,
and very good. I think
yeah.
Georgia has a guy that's really sort of had some very
He's had up
uneven
and downs. Yeah,
performances.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, pretty erratic. And but if he puts it together, I mean, they again are just sort of stacked with 5 stars, and you can't discount that. I mean, it means something.
No, it's true.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I like the way that Notre Dame is positioned. And to tell you the truth, getting in the playoff and having that adversity of having to fight through sort of the absolute um, hand wringing that came after Northern Illinois. That's not a terrible thing for the mentality of a football team, right? You're
right.
a little bit, you're always a play away
Yep.
from really screwing things up, and that seems to have worked. Freeman's message of walking around talking about NIU all the time seems
Yeah.
to have resonated with this team. Sometimes it doesn't with certain groups.
Right.
With
Something's
this one,
working. I mean,
Mhm.
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Something's working. They're
yeah,
definitely getting better. You can see it.
yeah. There's no doubt about that. Does so just out of curiosity, Coffee, is there anybody left on the schedule that who like if there was going to be a loss to happen, who do you think it would be?
Honestly, I have a hard time. Well, if there was, I would say it would be out at Southern Cal
Yeah.
for two. I mean,
Yeah.
as Ed was talking about, these guys, there is still talent on these teams. I mean, they may be
Army
falling
is
apart
probably the other
mentally,
team that
and
scares me a little bit, but yeah, I
well,
agree with you.
they're. I mean, these teams, and even Florida State this week. Yes, I expect Notre Dame to win by a lot, but again, these are talented teams that it only takes one gift or just something to click. Notre Dame makes a mistake or whatever and enters. That's what we saw with NIU. Notre Dame making mistakes
Yep.
and keeping the opponent in the game, the opponent getting fired up and playing at or above their talent level. I don't think that's going to happen this weekend, but I could see it happening in LA. Like you get a team, they're playing at home. They've had a crappy season. This is their opportunity
Yeah,
to,
they're going to knock Notre Dame out. That's what they're playing for. And believe me,
yeah.
those guys on
So,
that team would love to
and they've
do
got
that.
talent.
Yeah, they would
And you
love
got
to
to
do
stop the
it.
talent.
There's going to be a ton of pressure. That's a situation that Freeman hasn't really faced. If you think about it, he's up against an absolute must-win to get into playoffs. This is just going to be a huge, huge game that he's going
And
to have to
I
keep
think
these
it'll be
kids.
a barometer as to how Marcus Freeman has progressed as a coach. I
Yeah,
mean, NIU was disappointing because I had hoped that we'd left that
yep,
play down to the competition thing behind. But a game like, and even the game against Army is going to be the same way. You've got a
yep,
team that has an outside chance at getting into the playoffs, but they have to beat Notre Dame to do it. Now,
yep.
they don't have the passing dimension that Navy has, so I think they'll be relatively easier to defend, especially since we've already faced an option offense.
Yeah,
But
yeah, exactly.
this is going to show us how Marcus Freeman has progressed as a coach. If he can
Yep.
take the teams, keep them fired up, go into those venues, and come out with a win.
Yeah. All right, Ed, give me your prediction for Saturday, but then also tell me, what do you think? What are those chances that we run out? Do you think it's where do you see it right now at the moment
Well,
of the
chances that
likelihood?
we win out.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys that that USC is. I mean, we've been around too long not to see teams that are underdogs in that game end up balls bouncing the wrong way,
yep.
turnovers, tip ball. There's all kinds of stuff that can happen
Fumbles
out
at the
there.
2 yard line that are counted as a
Everything.
touchdown.
Yeah, everything. I mean, it's a rivalry game. It really is a true
Yeah.
rivalry game, and it'll be. I mean, I'm hoping Lincoln Riley has one half of his brain already, coordinating the Raiders offense next year. But
Right, right.
you know, uh, so I think they'll win. I think they'll win tomorrow night. I'm going to say 45-10, and I think that they will somehow. I don't even really know what's going on this weekend, but I think there really hasn't been a big surprise the last couple of weeks, I think. So I think there might be one this weekend, and I think I'm going to say that they're going to move up to number 9 after this week and take a little bit of a step closer. I don't know if it's going to be Michigan beating IU or if it's going to be maybe I can't remember who Tennessee plays. If they're playing somebody ahead of them has a tricky game. And to tell you the truth, Penn State was throwing so many eggs in last week's basket. I could see them coming up lame against somebody.
I could too. I could easily see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Coffee, what's your prediction?
Well, great minds think alike, because I have 49-10 in our prediction contest on the site. I know, like, the headlines I link every day. I mean, we go to the opponent's site and try to find, and all the articles I'm seeing there have talked about, oh, the offense didn't look good in practice. The offense didn't look good in practice. I mean, if they're not looking good playing against their own defense, what are they going to look like in a cold night game in South Bend playing against a defense, against an Al Golden defense? I mean, I cannot see Penn State scoring more than 10 points unless
Florida
it's
State.
or Florida State. Oh, well, I don't think Penn State.
Either one, right?
Yeah,
Neither one would. But no, I can't see Florida State scoring more than 10. The only way I could see it is if, Mike, as you said, if the entire second half is garbage time and we're playing the second or third string defense and they manage to get 1 or 2 touchdowns that don't mean anything, okay, that's fine. But
that's exactly
one-on-one,
actually, that's where
not going to happen.
Good lead into my prediction, because I think it's going to be 42-17, but I think the 17 is going to be garbage time. I really do. I think there's going to be guys that are going to play a lot. And again, look, part of me is like tugging at myself because I'm like, all right, wait a minute. We might eke this win out just because of the nature of college football. But because there are some athletes on that team, they're just literally missing a quarterback. I mean, they literally have not had any quarterback play whatsoever. I'm not going to say that's the reason for their failure. They got a ton of problems going on. It's obvious. They are not a 1-7 football team. That just makes no sense. Yeah. But it's a little scary. But yeah, I do think Notre Dame's going to win out. I think USC is going to be a tough game. I don't think that's going to be anywhere near a 14-point win. It's too much of a rivalry game. There's no way. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of pride. And so that game's going to scare me. It's going to be a really tough game to watch. But I really think that's the only game that we got to worry about. And I think Notre Dame will, if they continue to look like they have the last couple of games offensively, we should be really positioned well moving into the playoffs. I mean, it's going to be exciting. This is couldn't ask for a better fit for Notre Dame if they can make it through with the 12-team playoff. With the way college football is at the moment, there isn't that dominating Alabama that we had in 2012. Mm-hmm. Oregon does look good, but you never know what happens between now and then. So it should be interesting. But I think it is going to be a 42-17, just garbage touchdowns for Florida State, and I think the rest of the season is going to be pretty interesting.
I agree.
I think coming off a bye week wouldn't surprise me to see, sort of the frontline guys, playing, a series into the fourth quarter, and I think that might, kind of limit the garbage time. To tell you the truth,
Could. Yeah, you're right.
I could see that.
Could.
Out, especially now that they're getting rankings, and you can't tell me that even subconsciously that style points don't matter a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So
they probably do, as for Notre Dame especially.
Yeah.
At this
exactly.
point,
yeah. But the other thing is that there's going to be this narrative. Of course, I'm already hearing it. About how Notre Dame's incredibly soft schedule, and like Mike said, their worst loss, to NIU. But I saw an interesting stat this week, because I think sometimes when you throw that ranked team thing around, it's a little bit deceptive, because maybe just because the team was ranked when you played them, they could have fallen apart after that, or they're not ranked anymore, that kind of thing. Louisville's an example. Example of that. But what I thought was an interesting stat is that there's only 5 teams right now that have beat 3 or more, or have beat at least 3, not at least 3, that have beat up to 3 bowl eligible teams. And Notre Dame is one of those 5.
Wow.
So I think bowl eligibility, while it might not be an example of, a great schedule, because you could obviously have a lot of mediocre teams that have, end up with 6 or 7 wins, it does kind of show sort of like a higher quality than I think
I would agree.
Is the perception.
Well, it's based on what's on the field, which is great. I like that. That's a great stat.
Because you could look at that stat every week, and it's a little bit more meaningful than the
It is. Yeah, I think that's a great one. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. All right, good deal. We'll leave it there. You've been listening to Dome and Domer, an online conversation about Notre Dame sports from a fan's perspective. For Ed Jordanek and Mike Coffey, I'm Mike Bremer. Thanks for listening.